Hello there.
Hello.
So we are here for Dose of Unity talking about something that we're going to try to make it more interesting. It's talking about kind of finances and financial stuff. And so Capriana and I are here. We decided we needed mimosas for this conversation. So again, to make it a little more entertaining.
Money's hard, right? And we definitely want to preface this by saying we're going to focus on kind of financial literacy. We don't want to get into the weeds about financial advice or come off as speaking on high for anything, because we know that like economically, it's really hard out there for the average American to even to have a savings, to have an emergency budget, to be able to plan for retirement. And that's really scary. And that's not what we're here to do today. We definitely just want to talk about the things that impact us, the things that just like I said, financial literacy, financial competence, and kind of to know what we're looking for when we're talking about our basic financial needs and goals.
Yeah. And if you don't have your finances kind of figured out, it can be stressful and challenging. And so, so we're going to just try to start out with that. And, one of the things everybody talks about as we're diving in here is building your credit. So, Capriana, you have been raised in a way that you probably have heard about the stuff your whole life. Not sure, but it's something that either you know about it or you maybe don't know about it. So let's talk about building your credit. And I know with my kids, for example, that are young adults now, they're really paying attention to this now. And I mean, obviously paying your bills on time. And but the thing is, some are more going to follow you more than others. So do you want to talk about that as far as the bills that you pay on time?
Oh, paying bills on time. Yeah, for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
you have a 30-day cycle, basically, for your credit card payments. And the advice that I've heard, and had worked with people before in, buying our house and other things and trying to have the most optimal credit possible, is not so you can zero out your balance, but you do want to make sure that you are using your credit cards in order to continue building your credit. You want to use them within that 30-day cycle. You want to, it doesn't have to be a huge amount, right? But you want to stay on the map at least once a month with your credit cards. That's something that really does help your credit. So don't be afraid. I think that's the biggest thing is people are scared to use their credit cards. Don't be, just, make a plan to be able to pay them off. Even if you have a small balance, one of the things that does affect your credit is having high balances on all of your cards. So keeping the balances low, I think what I heard was like, I don't know, 20 to 30% if you must. But that's kind of the optimal level, just keeping your balances low, but still using them and not being afraid to use them. I mean, there's so many credit cards that have such good perks. Actually, my husband and I have a Amex Sky Miles card, and that was able to, I think we went to Colorado way back in the day when we got engaged, and we were able to use all of the Sky Miles that we had racked up from buying groceries and gas and stuff like
Yeah.
that. We paid $15 for both of our plane tickets first class to Colorado, which was really, really cool because like we had made sure to pay it off, but we'd used that card for everything. And you get,
Mhm.
various perks. I mean, my husband also has a Cabela's card, so he gets all these points for using it and stuff, and he can go, pay for whatever he pays for at Cabela's. So yeah, I think that that's the biggest thing as far as when it comes to your balances and paying your bills on time. Obviously, you don't want to have any red marks. That's really, really difficult. You can get into a situation what's called a rolling 30 days. Whereas if you get behind 1 month, but then you catch up, but you're still not quite caught up, that ends up being a rolling late. And that really, really, really does affect your credit. I think that's something people don't quite know, especially right now when it is hard to catch up on your bills. But you can get into that rolling cycle of it doesn't feel like it or look like it, but you're actually constantly 30 days behind, even though you're trying to catch up, you're still not quite there. So
Yeah. Well, and it's like, and I think, and this is something that I didn't really pay attention to when I was younger because I got my first credit card. I was all excited. And actually, again, I didn't have, I didn't have the money that I needed to make everything flush. So of course, the biggest thing is making sure if you're using the credit card, if you at all possible can be in a position where you're paying it off every
yep.
month. And you know, that is ideal, paying it off every month and making sure that you know what you're putting on the credit card so you have the money when that comes due. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, if you can get in a position where you're doing your auto bills or your groceries, your gas and everything and building up those points, but then just doing one payment, you know, that you do auto payment. But yeah, the other thing is to ensure that you're paying it off, do
Yep.
kind of an auto payment kind of thing. I know what you know, some people will, in order to use the credit card, just do something, even Netflix or whatever.
I was just gonna say,
So
that's
they're
what they
using
said, your
it monthly.
subscription services.
Yeah, and it pays it off every month, you know, because otherwise sometimes people can get a situation where they you know, might not realize how much is on there, and then if they do an auto pay, then they're in trouble, you know. But yeah, so those are a couple of things that make a difference. But as far as, yeah, there are certain things that will follow you around on your credit score, the credit cards, you know, utilities and certain things. And you know, I'm just going to jump ahead here too, in terms of what does happen if we get behind, you know, if you're in a situation where you can't pay something, whatever it is. One of the things I hear a lot is people are too afraid to just deal with it head on, and they just don't know how to handle it. The best approach is to contact whoever it is you owe money to and explain the situation. And you know, and you get the red mark if you don't do anything, but at least if you call them to say, here's my situation, you'd be surprised how many organizations, they're just so grateful that you called and let them know, and they'll put you on a payment plan. They'll note on their record, so it won't go on your credit report to show that you were late, you know. So that's the number one thing. And I hear this with anything from if you're having a hard time paying rent, you'd be surprised how many organizations or landlords have some type of resources, or you know, they'll work with you.
Plenty of renters assistance programs. And I think just kind of nationally too, renters, there's a lot of rights that renters have, more so than landlords. And not that's like, haha, landlords, but it's like you do have a lot of options. And there's a lot of, I think we kind of assume when we get in financial situations like that, we kind of assume that you're going to be looked down on. People are going to kind of be like, no, you know, figure it out. But that's not the case. We've dealt with that personally when, you know, Josh unexpectedly lost his job, and we were kind of like, oh my gosh, we had, you know, a baby on the way, and we didn't know, you know, what we were going to do. We had a mortgage and, you know, 2 vehicles and all this, and then, you know, the main source of income we had is just gone. Medical bills, you know, things like that. So you know, navigating insurance, all of that we had to pay for, that just hit us all at once. So one of the things that came about too was our credit cards. Like, oh my gosh, how are we going to pay these bills back? Or our mortgage, you know, that's obviously a huge credit thing. So how are we going to pay that back? Well, we did reach out. We reached out and we let them know that this is all what's going on. And every single one of them sent us a packet. They were like, okay, these are these programs, you have these options, there's this option, and if, you know, whatever, you can apply for this, we can apply for this, we can put a pause on this, we can do, like, it was so, because I remember like sitting there on the phone just like stressing out, like, oh my gosh, we're gonna put ourselves right into foreclosure or something like that, or bankruptcy or whatever. And they were like, nope, obviously we deal with this. There's stuff happens. And so every single one of them, and this is every major credit card company. I know they seem like these evil organizations and these money hungry, and, you know, to some extent we do see that, right? But at the same time, they're humans too. There are programs. So whatever situation it is, you know, don't let your credit be affected. Do everything you can, reach out, look into different organizations, because there are even nonprofits that we know of that like will pay off your credit card, you know,
Yeah, you'd be
crowdfunding.
surprised. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And just like you said, just willing to reach out and say, hey, this is this thing, you know. And I remember there was a time too, like from a medical perspective, I know people can get into a difficult situation if they have medical bills, right? Which you hear about all the time. You know, I've personally, you know, had to deal with this a few years ago when some pretty major stuff with one of my kids. And you know, I just contacted them to say, hey, this is what's happening and here's where we're at, you know. And there was, you know, some insurance stuff involved too. but again, same thing, here's where we're at, giving them an update because they have that permanently noted then on their account. But what we found too is that they'd say, they'd listen to you and then they'd say, actually, we have ways that we can write this off,
Yep.
and I'm just like, "Phew, I would not have known had I not called. And, and
And it
I,
lasts for a while.
what's that?
I said, yeah, and it lasts for a while. The financial assistance program, specifically in medicine, because obviously I deal with this all the time in my own personal job, but the sliding scale, like if you lost an income and all of a sudden you're down to, 25 grand a year,
Mhm.
you're probably gonna get 0%, like, or 100%, where you pay nothing because
Yeah.
they want to help. They want you to be able to access care, and that's why they have those financial assistance programs. And that's not just medicine, like we said, that's kind of every facet, your auto loan, provider, whoever, they have those things built in because people get in these situations. Stuff happens. It happens to people that work there.
Well, and it's, and
Want to
that's
send you to collections. Like that's
right.
tedious, it's expensive. They don't want to have to do that. They'll do everything they can before, even in medicine, sending you to collections.
Mhm. Exactly. Yeah.
Right? Like my husband is randomly going somewhere. So my kids are a
Yeah.
little rowdy this morning, so I apologize. I think he's taking them off location.
Oh, well, I put my dogs in their kennels this morning so they wouldn't be barking at, people going by.
Yep. Mine are downstairs too. The cats are also occupied. So
Oh, goodness. But yeah, I think that the takeaway on this conversation is for people not to be hesitant to just call and say, hey, here's my situation. Because I know it can seem scary. I had an aunt who was really underwater and she had this a lot of bills that were just kind of floating out there. And I said, well, have you contacted them? And then her response to me was, oh, well, they don't care about a person like me. They just care about making money. And I thought, well, that's not true, call them. And so I worked with her and we went through one by one by one. And she was just like, wow. But she was listening to like to some of the voices out there, like, oh, they don't care about, and she learned, let's just say she learned that she could do that. And again, we've heard this story with, landlords and all sorts of things. They do have the ability to make recommendations on helping, but anyway, yeah. So we were talking about the building credit, some of the things that can affect that, and I think we covered that pretty well. It's pretty obvious, but yeah, they're going to look at different things too, understanding, what income level you're at, like with the credit cards, and to see what percentages you're at, and if you're paying it off, and all those kind of things that can affect it. But nowadays, there are those built-in suggestions on what can increase your credit score. And I just talked to somebody who put those into place about 4 months ago, and his credit score is now in the hundreds, and it started like at high 500. So he's super excited. He didn't do that much. I think in his case, he applied for a credit card, uses it and pays it off every month on time, and some of the other things. And that was all it took. And let's talk about just real briefly why the credit is important. It's not that companies or mortgage banks or whatever, it's not like they're trying to say, oh no, we don't like you, so we're not going to give you a loan or whatever. They want to be assured that you are going to pay them back, because obviously that's why they're in business. So just like if you're going to say to a friend that wants a loan, it's like, is this buddy of yours reliable, that that they're going to pay you back when they get paid or whatever? If they've done it over and over and over again, you're going to be like, sorry, I'm not going to get screwed by you again. So it's the same thing with these companies. They need to be assured that you're going to pay them back. It's not it's not that they don't like you or whatever.
and that's why you should reach out. And there's so much, kind of like you had noted, there's so much you can get today. Experian, you can sign up for an account for free. Credit Karma, you can monitor your own credit, and you can see, like, it breaks it down like super layman's terms. Like I get alerts, I am on that stuff. Like it breaks it down to the point where it's like, okay, you have this many hard inquiries from, you know, if you were trying to shop for a vehicle or whatever, and okay, these ones are going to fall off. This affects your credit score, this percentage, or your debt to income ratio, whatever your balance is, how high your balances are. This is how much this affects it. And you can also play with the tools that they have, which I find really fun, because it's like, what if I paid off all of my student loans because I won the lottery tomorrow? And it's like, oh, look at that score go up. But regardless, you can kind of play around and see, you know, okay, well, I can pay $500 to this, and I can, you know, the debt snowball, right? I can start with my credit card with the highest interest rate, and I can make sure I can work to pay that one down, and then just roll that monthly amount that you're comfortable spending on all of your credit cards, keep rolling it down until you're at zero. And then, you know, obviously set up some situation where you can spend. The other thing too about that is, being careful on closing cards, because something else that affects your credit is length, like time of credit, like how long you've had those things. So your average length of time. So like if you find this really cool new credit card and you apply for it and you get it, that's going to bring your average time down. Even if your oldest credit card you've had for 10 years and it's been fine, that's going to bring your average down. But you can say, oh, I got this new credit card, so I'm going to close my old one. That's the worst thing you can do. You know, you're better off not using it if you really don't want to, than closing the account, because that'll bring your average, you know, the lifespan of your credit down, which is something lenders look for. It's like, how long have this person been contributing to their credit? Oh, 10 years. They've had great standing for 10 years. That's a gold mark for you. Yeah. So paying attention to those monitoring things, but also Credit Karma and Experian, they're in business too. So they have kind of incentives. Like they'll say, oh, you've got really good approval odds for this credit card. I would hesitate on that. I would, if you don't need it, you don't need it. They're not telling you it's good for your credit. They're telling you have good approval odds, and it's good for them because they have a partnership with this particular company. So I would steer clear of those maybe, but self-monitoring is great.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny. It reminds me of, you know, every time you go to JCPenney or whatever, they're trying to get you to sign up for a credit card. And, you know, I think they're required to ask at least 3 times to try to get that person to turn it around and agree to it. And the thing is, yeah, that each of those, it impacts your credit. And I remember I did get into trouble when I was younger, and I didn't have very much money. So it's like, if I needed to get some clothes for work or whatever, I remember it was a store that's no longer around now, but yeah. And so before I got married, and this is kind of another little point that we have here, is like you were saying, try to keep paying off as you can. Well, if somebody is really break even or in the red when it comes to their income to expense ratio, it gets difficult. But, you know, there are ways that you can pick up a shift at different places to earn a little bit more money and put that right against those credit cards, which is something that I've done, you know, back in the day when I was in that situation. And one of my relatives recently picked up a job part-time at Menards just to, you know, pick that up. And, you know, I know some people, one of my good friends, she was stressed out because she said, you know, I need to pay childcare if I'm going to go do that, you know, a single mom. And so we worked on an arrangement that, hey, you know, I'll babysit for you on Sunday, you know. And then I didn't have kids at the time, but, you know, I've seen her and other friends like, okay, we'll kind of rotate and watch each other's kids and kind of do that community thing. But there are ways, you know, but yeah, anything you can do to try to earn a little bit more money to pay those down. And that really reduces stress right there, as far as, because it can be heavy when you've got the credit card balances that are just hanging over your head. And you know,
well,
but
sorry, go ahead.
No, it's just like making sure that you know where your budget is, and we'll talk about that next.
Oh yeah, no, I was just gonna say something funny. One of the hottest things my husband ever said to me was, I'm gonna pay off your credit card. After I had just like a dismal retail therapy thing, and I was just like crying into a bunch of bags of stuff, and I was like, I spent like $1,000, and he was like, it's okay, I got it, don't even worry about it, I got it. He's like, and I was like, because I was fully like, I have to return all of this, and it just felt so good, and I'm sorry. And he was like, you're fine, don't return it, like, we're fine. Like, I got it. And I was like, I knew I loved you for a reason. You can put up with me.
So funny. That is so funny. Yeah. And it's nice when you got that, right? When you got that option, and Yeah, and these days, I mean, everything is about like, seems like, you have to do all these things and dress a certain way and have the latest, everything. And you can get really bogged down with that. And going to Starbucks every day because, and it makes you feel good. And I used to go out of my way when my kids were little. I had three very young ones all together. And I'd go out of my way to go through the drive-through Starbucks. That was something I did for myself. And actually, I needed to cut back. So it's like I started doing it once a week, but that was like
Yeah.
just for me, but it's like you have to think about that. So like going to, talking about the budget part of it, knowing every dollar you're spending
Yep.
is really important. And then really looking at that closely to say, okay, do I need this in order to survive, or do I not? Can I make the lunches, or as opposed to going to lunch, or can I make coffee at home versus going to Starbucks, or
Even if
do
I
I
want
live
that.
in other countries?
Yeah, because people make fun of Dave Ramsey. I don't know if you've heard of him for
Yeah.
they make fun of him for like being so anti-Starbucks and stuff. And it's like for a lot of us millennials, like we don't have much to be happy about these days.
I know.
So it's like, I just want my pumpkin spice latte, leave me alone. But like there are if you have an opportunity to like work that into your budget, fine. Okay, like maybe let's make a weekly Starbucks trip work for you, and you spend X amount, or you put X amount on your little Starbucks card, and once that's gone, that's gone. Whatever it is, however you can do that, or budget for, twice a month going out to eat, but you spend $30 on yourself, meal and drinks, and take it out in cash, even, because that was something that I know we'll probably talk about for budgeting, is setting aside cash for fun stuff, right? Whatever your fun stuff is. And once that's gone, that's gone. So, I mean, you can make a plan for it, or you don't have to, but once it's gone, it's gone. And then being, having that discipline, I think, is another thing. Cause like and this is something I work on too, because if I have access to money and I get to a point where I'm just like, I just need something, I will go over budget. I will. Like, I know that about myself. So I have to have a lot more discipline. Like if I'm going out or if I'm doing something, I make sure that like, okay, I will take this out in cash. I am not traveling with a card, unless it's like emergency stuff. I have this cash, this is what I'm spending, and I'm done. And my husband is wonderful and holds me accountable.
Yeah, it's so fun.
He doesn't babysit me, but I ask him to. Yeah, because I mean, you have to know, to have the discipline, but they're hard.
It is hard. Well, it's like, I had, kids that were, go at the age that they're going to bars, and stuff.
Yeah.
And okay, they would go with their debit card, and they had like an emergency credit card. But your debit card, if that money is, and they only would have a little bit of money in there, and two, if it got kind of the joke, if it got stolen, the debit card at the bar or something, and somebody was to try to use it, they wouldn't get very far. But that kind of thing helps, because then you just, I'm out, I don't have any money. So I think, sticking to the budget, need versus want, and just knowing, again, like these are your hard costs. You can't not have a place to live. You have to have your utilities. You have to have some food. And that's the other thing. I mean, obviously inflation's increased all those costs right now, but planning ahead, making meals and freezing them and all that kind of stuff to stretch your dollars and not have to throw away the food that you buy. There's all those things you can do. But then once you do all of your budgeting, you see, okay, I'm in the hole by, $150 a month or whatever. That's when you got to really dig deep and think, can I take on, extra 4 hours a week on the weekends or something? And to try to just pay that off. And it reminds me when I was younger, and we would have a chance to take, I was doing administrative work, and we had a chance to take home some filing stuff and work overtime for it. And my friend and I that worked together, we were super excited because that meant an extra $50 in our pocket. And that was like everything. That was a way for me to pay the utility bill or whatever. But that was just like, oh, it was heaven for me, for an extra $50 a month, and, but anyway, it all adds up. And, and the other aspect about this too is again, trying to be creative on how you can take an extra job or whatever it is. And once you free yourself of that heaviness, it just is a world of difference, makes a world of difference.
Oh my gosh. I ended up having to consolidate because I got into the same trap of like, oh, look, I can apply for all these credit cards and look how much money I have that I didn't realize that I didn't actually have. And that, you know, you have to pay back eventually.
Mhm.
I ended up consolidating. I got a consolidation loan, and was able to consolidate all of my credit cards. And I remember making the last payment on my consolidation loan because I had hit all my credit cards for myself, and I was like, I'm not using these, even though I could have, whatever, but I was like, not healthy mindset, not going to use them. Um, I remember making that last payment of my consolidation loan and just like sitting back and be like, it's gone.
Yeah.
It's gone. Like, how many payments did I have a month? That's like $500 back in my pocket every single month because I had such high interest and such like just I was
Yeah.
making the minimum payments, and like
Right.
that's
Interest.
another thing. Like,
Yeah.
you know, you can pay more, pay more. Um,
Mhm.
yeah. So like, yeah, it's a great feeling to have that off of you. And if you can, same thing with like cars and stuff. Like if you if your car still runs, I know we all feel like we need the latest and greatest and the newest model of everything, and we're willing to put ourselves upside down or in the hole just to have something to put on social media, but it's really not worth it. You know, like my vehicle, my SUV is almost paid off, and we're talking about um you know, as the boys grow and how much more space we need and we need a bigger vehicle. Well, it's like, okay, well, my vehicle's paid off. Do we need that right now? No, I don't need to
Right.
go get a Suburban right now. Like mine is perfectly fine right now. It's almost going to be paid off. That's going to be an extra however much my payment is in our pocket every month, you know? Well, I'm gonna drive that thing into the ground. I don't care what it looks like, you know?
Yeah, exactly. It really, it does make a big difference. And, you know, and again, just like what works for you versus, yeah, worrying about like, why do you need, you know, like you said, if it's because you just think you're embarrassed because you're driving a car that's got rust on it, who cares? You know, it's okay, you know, and yeah, it's funny. There was this gentleman that from my hometown that he lived very frugally, and he started this company that he built into this multi-million dollar company.
Awesome.
And I had to interview him for something. Long story. He still lived in this tiny little house, still drove this jalopy of a car, and he was the most humble, sweet man, gave a lot of money to charities. And you know, looking at the company, you'd think, oh wow, that's like this, you know, whatever. And he was the nicest, sweetest man, but you'd never know, you know, based on how he lived his life, that he was, you know, the founder of this multi-million dollar company.
Yeah.
He's, like I said, just the sweetest man. But anyway, yeah.
I
So
love
what's
that.
next?
I don't know. I think we talked about a lot. I know that we talked about, you know, sticking to your budgets and what you need versus what you want, building your credit, what to do if you get behind on stuff. We can, you know, loans are another thing that we can chat about briefly because it kind of has to do with all of that stuff. And kind of principal and interest and how to pay. Because I know I student loan payments are knocking on my door, and I don't. That's just such a huge daunting thing. Um, so I know that we had written down some notes, but even like with your mortgage or rent or not rent, but with your credit cards or whatever, um, if you can pay more, because the minimum payment pretty much covers the minimum payment and like interest. So you're not really gonna get ahead. It's gonna take you like I think one of mine said like 99, like it's 99 months or something. Like it's going to be crazy. So if you can pay more, a little bit more, that goes to your principal. So it'll take the amount down faster. As far as loans go too, if you do if you're fortunate enough to have a mortgage and a house in this economy, um, something I've learned is paying biweekly instead of monthly actually helps you get ahead because you're making, I think, was it one or two extra payments a year?
Yeah.
So it ends up cutting things down a lot, and it feels a little bit more manageable than making like a, you know, one giant payment, splitting it into two. Most of us get paid biweekly, so it's kind of just like it helps,
Mhm.
and you'll be surprised at how fast your mortgage comes down. Um,
Yeah,
over
yeah, we did that too. Yeah, and it felt really good. I mean, it was just a little bit extra, and it goes directly to principal, and it cuts back so much on the interest you're paying. And so these are those little tricks that you can do. And again, people might think, oh, I can't, but like you said, even the biweekly, um, as opposed to monthly payments. And if it's auto pay too, that's another thing too. It's like, you don't really thinking about it. It's just automatically, um, paying it off. And along those lines too, the automatic stuff, you know, the other big piece of it too is, from a savings perspective, you know, so we're kind of talking about two different things, but a savings perspective too, if you automatically have savings coming out of your check automatically, you don't even think about it, you know, just it just keeps building, you know, whether it's the savings or nowadays, you know, the savings interest rates are not very good. But if you're, you know, putting it into some type of investment plan, the other thing too is like if your company offers a 401k, this is something my dad told me. He's like, whatever 401k you want to do, the maximum that they will match. And that's something that was drilled into my brain. And so when I was in my 20s and started that, it really did help quickly to build that up. And so that my kids are asking me that now as they're starting their jobs. And it's like, you at least minimally want to do the max that they're matching if your company matches.
Yeah, if you can do that, of course. We all know that, like, over the years, I've watched my 401k, my retirement account just tank. And it's really hard to see that, you know, if your company switches retirement companies and they're not as good with that, and you know, there's so many unpredictable things. But there's also looking into, and we don't have to get into like hyper specifics here, but you know, working with you know, like an Edward Jones, like a wealth management or, you know, assistance firm that kind of helps you figure out where to put your money and how to budget and what you actually have. Because speaking to, you know, if it automatically, your savings automatically comes out, you know, that's part of your budget, right? So you're less that every month, but it's, you know, you're up. Don't touch it unless you really need to. Because, you know, if you're ever in a bind and it doesn't meet the emergency withdrawal terms of your 401k, you're going to get taxed on that. So that's a huge amount that's gone from you if you ever needed it. So there are other types of accounts, Roth IRAs, traditional IRAs, different types of accounts that you can do and utilize. Trusts, you know, build an LLC and put your stuff in a trust and make your trust the benefit, or make your LLC the beneficiary. There's like a million different things that you can do that helps you build wealth for that feels a little bit more secure than maybe kind of if you're scared of investments, because we all should be. They're risky, they can be. And same thing with 401ks, you know, it's hard, right? So having assistance when it comes to how to make your savings and how to make your money work for you, I think is pivotal. And those services are not like luxury services where you have to go and you have to shell out all this money. I had an Edward Jones advisor when I was beginning in college, just to help me figure out, you know, my parents were paying tuition, right? But I had my own job. So figuring out how to pay for these incidentals, you know, I paid for my own books and, you know, things like that, paying for gas, for insurance, for whatever it was, just helping me navigate that. And I think that we don't learn a lot, and at least I didn't in high school, as far as this sort of thing. So I felt very ill prepared and I made a lot of really dumb financial choices. But yeah, having that advisor, it cost me nothing. It cost me absolutely nothing. And he really, really helped me be in a different mindset and figure out what's out there to be able to use. Because we see stuff on TikTok all the time and it's like, oh, that's really cool, I'm going to go do that. And then you go and try and do it. And you're like, your eyes glaze over, because it's just, where do you even start? You know, how do you even navigate that?
Yeah. And some people listening might think, okay, we're talking a different language, you know, but there are resources out there. I mean, even just, you know, obviously the internet is so nice just to type in, you know, anything you want and you can get some information or find out who is out there that could give you free advice on this stuff. And a lot of people make the mistake of thinking, oh, well, I don't make very much money at all, so I'm not going to talk to them. It's using whatever money you do have in a smart way, so that you can kind of build that path. And you know, and the other thing we didn't talk about really yet is having that emergency fund. So if there was something that came up, and that's where a lot of people get into trouble too. Your brakes go out in your car, and now what? You know, you could put it on a credit card, perhaps, but it's you know, they say that you want to have a certain amount of money put away for emergencies that pop up. And I'm just looking at my notes here, the emergency fund, and how much, but you want to make sure you have enough, at least minimally, for 3 months too, if you were to lose your job, and have that amount of money to fall back on. And again, it's hard to do when you don't have a lot of money to begin with, but that goes back to, again, budgeting and making sure every single thing you spend money on is something you need, because it's surprising how quickly you could save if you really are trying. And I just think back to before I was married, and I didn't make very much money at all, but it was like I scrimped to the bare bone, and I was able to pay off my credit cards before we got married. And that was like remarkable. I didn't think I could do it, until I really looked and thought, okay, every single thing I was spending money on, do I really need that? Can I cut that back? So
Yeah, if that's your goal. And I think too, with, like we talked about inflation, it's hard for people to even save a pad. Everybody's living paycheck to paycheck just to try and make it. That's an incredibly hard burden. Even if you are feeling like you're living bare bones already. And I can empathize with that. Like I've been there, like we had to cut out what we think is necessary, like internet. I was like, I'm gonna have to go to the library, things, just little things like that. But then you're like, transportation. Okay, well, I still have to have gas, or is there an opportunity for me to bite the bullet and ride the bus or whatever it is, and just try. I mean, there's a million different things you can do, and it's incredibly hard, and it's very uncomfortable. And as much as we can be self-sustainable as possible, like even if you live in the middle of New York City in like a tiny little apartment, you can have a little herb garden on your countertop or wherever, just because then you don't have to go to the store for that. My mom taught me how to scrap garden, so I never have to buy romaine lettuce anymore or anything else, because like you can just oh my gosh, I forgot the word. It starts with a P. But you can propagate. You can you can, there's a million different things that you can do that are just, okay, now I don't have to buy produce anymore, and it's all inside the house. It's something I can easily access. Or learning how to make, like you said, your coffee at home. If you really, really like your pumpkin spice latte, there's a million different hacks for how to make that syrup or how to make that recipe, and you can do it at home. And just a million different ways that we can make ourselves more sustainable, because society is hard right now. The economy is hard. Everyone's feeling it. And whatever little ways we can do, no matter how much or little we think that we have to make our money work for us, is going to help us in the long term. And then also just being okay to be uncomfortable, building community. Because I think that that's something that I see, at least in my community, working towards, is almost like a back to that trade and barter system, because all of us collectively have come together and we're like, we don't want to buy anything, so what can I do for you, you do for me. Like you had mentioned the babysitting. Yeah. Like you have the one childcare family who loves kids and their house is just a big daycare, and then you have Josh does everybody's taxes. We have various things that people can do, or building businesses. I know that you are very familiar with that, but like if there's a neighbor with a small Etsy shop or whatever, I'm like, hey, I'm your marketer, I'll help you, whatever you want to do.
Oh, funny. And my neighbor, I was asking, needed help with the dogs, when we were going to be out of town. And she's like, well, I hear that you know stuff about, marketing. So she said, why don't we just, do a trade? And my parents live out in the country, and they bought a place that has a field of hay, and they didn't need it. So they did a trade with the neighbor that has chickens. And so they say, okay, I'll give you some hay and you can give me some chickens. And then they also have a garden, so it's, we joke around that, if all hell broke loose, that they could live off the land,
And that's so important. And so like building that sense of community, because to the same end, like my husband's a hunter. Like that's a skill that like has gone away in human society, because now our meat comes from the grocery store and we don't actually know where it comes from. So that's kind of how we've gotten stuff before, is like, okay, well, Josh got a turkey. We harvested a turkey. Do you want a turkey? We would love some beef. So somebody has a cow, they've got some, whatever it is, or do you want some venison? We'll do whatever. So there's thinking outside of the box about your finances, and getting outside of that kind of modern societal limitation when it comes to sort of these things, is another way to really, really help yourself. And again, it's uncomfortable. It's a lot of work. It's hard to maintain some of these things. It's hard to, the trade and barter system. It's hard, but we've been so used to paying for convenience And now we don't have the
Mm.
money to pay for convenience anymore as a society. We just don't. So we have to go back to kind of basics. And I think that
Well,
that's
and a lot of
very,
people, yeah, they haven't figured that out. You know, it's, I don't know, like with my aunt, for example, she kind of felt like a victim. Like she felt like someone else. Well, they this and well, they don't. Blah, 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 all this they. It's like who is they exactly? You know, like who are you complaining about? The government or who or this? You know, well, ultimately, what can you personally do to help yourself? You know, and like you say, all these examples that we're using is a way to figure it out. Because like there was a time, you know, I had a lot of relatives that talked to me about the depression, and there were no options. You either caught your food and ate it, or you went hungry and starved. You know, you either went out in the woods and cut down trees and built your own place, or you didn't, or what you whatever. But I think that it's important for people to understand that mentality too, because ultimately it comes down to your choices and your willingness to do what it would take, and it makes it more freeing. But a lot of people I know that went through that ended up doing quite well in the end because they figured that out, but they had to figure it out in the first place, right? So yeah, and that was a perfect example with my aunt, just even calling the people she owed money to just to explain her situation. And like I said, she was so just blown away by how understanding the organizations were and how helpful. And a lot of them did write off what she owed.
yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, well, good. Well, I'm just looking to see if there's anything. Oh, there's one other little tidbit here. And it's the 30-day rule. Okay. So this one says instead of allowing yourself to make any type of impulse purchase, you should wait for 30 days before you buy. And then, and in fact, this one is saying you should defer all non-essential purchases for 30 days to give you time to think if you really need that. I thought that was kind of cool because yeah, yeah, for me, like I've sometimes gotten into a bad habit and I'm getting better, but like at night I'd be on my phone or whatever, and then this up comes an ad on Instagram or whatever. Oh, those are cute pants. Like I need those. And it's late, maybe having a glass of wine, and it's like, and then I'm sleepy, and it's like, oh yeah, okay. And then in the morning, I'm like, oh crap, that's right. I ordered that. I really didn't need that.
Thank God for Amazon allowing you to cancel purchases, because I've definitely woken up in the morning and I'm like, oh man, cancel. But also my latest problem is TikTok shop. And I most recently bought these really ridiculous pumpkin signs, and they're in my yard. And every time I look at them, I'm like, I spent $74 on those. They're going to be here for like a month. Like, why did I do that? So yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then
30-day rule is important for sure.
Yeah. Is it gaining you anything? And yeah. So I mean, I know we could talk more and more, but I think we covered some good bases. Is there anything that we didn't cover?
No, I think that's pretty much everything we wanted to talk about today. So if you guys like this sort of content, let us know. If you want to hear more kind of life skills types of things, we'd love to be able to share. Diane and I both, over the course of our learning lives and career lives and everything, have unique experiences that we love to share, and we have unique people that we know that would love to share as well. So yeah.
Along those lines, we have some exciting interviews coming up on Dose of Unity, and so we'll keep you guys posted on that. So it's just amazing how many people are out there doing some phenomenal things. So so we've got those kind of two parts, the life skill angle, topics, and then we have more the interview, the deep issue kind of stuff that we're digging into. So stay tuned, and thank you so much, Capriana. And I miss seeing you face to face. We'll do hopefully our next one face to face. So
for sure. Awesome. Well, take care, everyone. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you in the next one.
It's great. See ya.
Bye.